Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a kind of quick Christmas card idea for you. This will use up pattern paper. You get 4 cards of the same design out of one sheet, so you could make you could use the pattern paper without scraps. I wouldn't quite call it a one sheet wonder since it's like the same thing over and over again. It's not very complicated, but if you did want to use up some pattern paper, this is a pretty cool design. So I took a 3x3 piece of pattern paper, and then I'm going to put it on a 3¼ by 3¼ mat of cardstock. I'm using an old Lawn Fawn plaid. It's no longer available, but there are some other Christmas plaids I'll link you to. I love the look of plaid at Christmas and the look of Kraft, but I like it with red. So I went for a red glitter snowflake. This particular snowflake design is from Scrapbookcom. What I like about it is it has the label right there on it, and then you can cut a separate label. So I cut this out of glitter, but then I'm going to get to layer the label with my sentiment on it later. This can be a little bit tricky to do with glitter paper. Gluing on glitter paper can be a little hit or miss. However, my trusty Barely Arts glue is going to do the trick. I have glued using Barely Arts glue on glitter paper before with no problem, so that's what I'm going to use. I did also cut a second snowflake out of some thick white cardstock so that my piece would have a little bit more of a substantial feel to it. The glitter cardstock I have is, well, it's not, I wouldn't even call it cardstock, I'd call it paper. It's pretty thin. However, the glitter doesn't come off and it is really high shine. It is something I picked up in store at Joann's, so I'll link you something similar, but I've sourced most of my glitter paper in person. I also did want to just take a brief second to mention that this is a scrapbook.com exclusive, the snowflake. So there, of course, will be links in the video description, but they're having a lot of cool sales right now and some like extra percentages off and free gifts and things like that. So if you're in the mood, and it is a shopping day for some people, might be worth checking out. Well, the day this is released is a shopping. I guess any day is a shopping day for people. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I'm using the Winter Dragon from Lawn Fawn. I used the sentiment, which says, wishing you have a very magical holiday. And in the stamp it says season, but that did not fit across this. So I just went with holiday and I cut off the season. There is a version of the die set from scrapbook.com that also comes with sentiments, so they would fit perfectly if that's something that you're interested in, but I just figured I have so many sentiments that I didn't need to add a sentiment set. I'm using the Rockin' Red from Catherine Pooler because it's a really vibrant red. In general, I find her colors to be really vibrant and they ink really well, but they do stain your stamps. So if you really don't like staining your stamps, I can't recommend Catherine Pooler inks, but in every other account, I really like them, and I have a bunch of the minis. Okay, so back to my trusty Barely Arts glue, and I'll glue that down on top of my 3x3 square here. Then I decided to, you could stop the card here. So if you wanted a faster card that was, a little bit more mass producible, maybe stop there. I think that the card looks finished at this point if you were to adhere it down. And I think you could do a portrait, landscape, you could put it in the middle, you could put it off to the side, you could add some more to it. There's plenty of options there. I'm going to choose to go in the middle with a landscape card. However, I wanted a little bit more something to my card. I really like cute critters. I like coloring, so I'm going to add the dragon from the Lawn Fawn set earlier. A green color combination that I use a lot and have found works for animals and is green enough for Christmas without necessarily being that sort of like evergreen kind of green is YG 17, 13, and 11. I picked that most of the shadows, I just kind of decided they would be on the back of the dragon. I'm not worried about light source. There is no light on this card. He's just all by himself. So I just put some shadows there. I put some drop shadows, which is where his part of his body would cast a shadow on another part of his body. I'm going to save most of my detail and my best coloring for his body because that is the most prominent part of this critter. I'm leaving most of the area for my YG11 so that my shadows stay nice and deep, and in fact I will go back and add a second layer of my shadow color, just a very thin line of the darkest green so that my shadows deepen a bit. But then in other areas like his belly, I was going to add some green stripes, and I also decided to make his horns green. So I just color them in the solid YG17, and I don't worry about any blending there. It saves me just a tiny bit of time, not having to switch back and forth between the markers. And it's not even very noticeable if you put a lot of detail into that. Obviously, some people would notice, but as I've mentioned before, I always try to focus on the main part of the image. Now, because I'm only adding a little bit of red, I did a bit more shading with it. I did 2 colors on the spikes of his back and his belly, and then I do 3 colors in the scarf because that is the biggest area of red. So it's not the most prominent area of the image, but it's the most prominent of that color. So that's kind of my thought there. And if I did a little bit more detail on the belly with the red, it adds some detail to the belly without having to do it for both colors. I like R39, 35, 37, and I again just deepened my shadows just a little bit. Now, once it was finished, I decided that it was missing a little something, and something that I like to do, particularly on reptiles, but I've done it like on rhinos and stuff too. I think it kind of implies like a dry or scaliness. I don't know, it's just, I don't know if that makes any like science sense, but I like to add the dots. I don't like it necessarily in furry critters as much personally, although I like it when other people do it. It just doesn't like pop into my head for furry creatures. So I just add the little dots in the YG17 in the shadow areas, and then extending a little bit into the lighter areas so that, again, to me, it looks like it adds a bit of like more of the scaliness or the dryness that you might see in a reptile to him. And then I will cut it out with my scan and cut machine. You could, of course, get coordinating dies. Originally, I thought I'd put it in the center of the snowflake, but in the end, I actually liked it off to the bottom right there. So I will, again, use my Barely Arts glue because it's going to overlap the snowflake, and that's glitter paper. Of course, there's other glues out there that work, I'm sure. It's just I found this glue, settled on it, liked it, so that's why I'm going to keep mentioning it because it's what I know. And he's hanging off of the edge here, and there's several layers. So there's like the cardstock layer, the pattern paper layer, then the cardstock and the glitter paper. So he's quite a bit off the card by being glued onto the snowflake. So that back half of his body I felt like would need just a tiny bit more support. So I took a bunch of little cardstock scraps and I glued them together to kind of build up and support his tail there. Then, since this is a Christmas card, I did want to share a quick little tip that I don't always mention, but there are a couple of greeting stamp sets out there, particularly this one from Sunny Studio and one from Lawn Fawn that I own, that allow you to stamp an entire Christmas greeting. So like several lines of greeting. I wouldn't necessarily think to put them on the front of the card, but I think they would work well there too. I just like the idea of, you know, when you go to the store and you get printed cards, they do all that work for you, and you just add a little personal message at the bottom. And that's kind of my thought here, is that I will add this and then a little bit more of a personalization to my cards, but it, you know, saves me some time in prepping a bunch of Christmas cards. So once that's also stamped in the Rockin' Red, that will be it for my card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll leave you links to all the products that I used in the video description below. And also down there, you can find many other resources on my blog, card sketches, one sheet wonder templates, and you can find like links to my social media, Instagram, etc. I'll also leave you some videos here at the end to check out. Thanks so much for joining me. Please leave me a comment. I love talking to you guys down there. Have an awesome day. Bye.